podcast where we explore the ever evolving world of customer success with some of the brightest minds in the industry. I'm your host, Kritika, and today we have a very special guest joining us. I'm thrilled to introduce Atma. He's a highly accomplished customer success leader known for driving exponential growth, building top performing teams, and ensuring unparalleled customer satisfaction for different companies. He's leading customer success effort at More Engage these days. So, Atma, welcome to the podcast. We are so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Kritika. Really appreciate the opportunity. And thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Appreciate it.
All right, so let's start with your journey. You've had a remarkable career in customer success. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to write this amazing book, Customer Success Flywheel, and just getting started with customer success in the first place?
No, thank you, Kritika. I mean, when I look back at my experience, it's surreal. And this year is coincidentally, it's been 20 years since I started working. And at the risk of sounding old, I started working in customer success even before it was called customer success, right? So I pretty much am a lifer at companies. I don't leave. I just worked in three companies over my 20 years lifespan. I started with British Telecom, and because of various reasons, I had to move to Salesforce, which was a blessing in disguise because at Salesforce, not only I was working on the cutting edge of technology, which is cloud computing, which was relatively very new at that time, but I also had an opportunity to be one of the first few CSMs in Canadian market, so which was in itself a boon. And then I learned everything that I know and try to implement the basics of customer success are what Salesforce taught me, and it is one of the companies which has customer success as its core value. And when I was leaving Salesforce, I was very critical about what my next journey would be, and I was lucky to end up with More Engage, and coincidentally, customer first, which is equivalent to customer success, is a core value, and in fact, one of the most important values. It was the first value that More Engage had. So I'm kind of lucky to be placed right place, right time, I guess, and that's what encouraged me to learn more, implement more, and I think now in 20 years, I can confidently say I have built and led several professional services, customer success, and tech support teams across the globe, and I continue to learn every day from bright minds like yourselves, and I think these initiatives are helping a lot. Sorry, I think the second question you had was what inspired me to write the book, right? So I think there are three primary reasons. Kritika, obviously, there are several others, but I would like to call out three primary reasons. I think first and foremost is in my 20 years of experience, particularly as a CS leader, I kind of learned a lot of things through trial and error, right? I burned my fingers. And then when I look back at my career, some things were very new, relatively very new, and nobody had kind of given a playbook or how to. So I just wanted to write my experience, and by no means I'm saying this is prescriptive, and I think every CCO should follow it or every CS leader should follow it. But at the very least, I hope people can read my book and learn from my mistakes, right? This is just a guidance or even an input in the decision process because I made these mistakes and I wrote the book based on my learning so that others don't have to go through the same rigor. That's the most important reason, right? The second reason, Kritika, is while there is a lot of West centric customer success material out there, I learned that India is a very different market. While India is known for its service attitude, service mentality, Indian enterprises look at price sensitivity differently. And there are different unique innovations required to cater to customer success in Southeast Asia, India, and Asian markets. Particularly having worked in a Asia headquartered company which is catering to the globe, I realized there is definitely a different lens that we need to place while looking at the literature of customer success. So I wanted to write a book with India-centric global expansion kind of a mindset, and that's where I put my thoughts to paper. And third and most important piece, Kritika, is if you look at any other discipline in running a business, right? And most of your viewers or audience would agree that if you've done an MBA, there is a lot of literature on, say, marketing as a principle or a sales as a principle, HR as a vertical. There is a lot of body of work, but unfortunately, customer success is still not very well defined. There is not a lot of thought leadership, despite of what people in this space are exposed to compared to other verticals. This is very little, right? In terms of tools, thought leaderships, body of work, literature, etc. So I think it is on to all of us, including you, Kritika. Hopefully, at some point of time, you will author a book as well. I think it is on all of us to share the information, create that body of work together, and share the best practices. So I think these are the three primary reasons, Kritika, for me to write the book.
Excellent, excellent, Atma. And I know we have talked about this, that how this is focusing a lot on Indian market, and we are going to deep dive
Yeah.
on that particular point. And it's extremely excited to know more about that point from you probably later in the podcast. But
Yeah.
yeah, really looking forward to reading your book, and it seems super exciting.
Thank
I
you.
want to know a little bit more about different aspects that you have covered in the book. What are a few of the things that companies or professional at different stages in their career can learn from this?
No, thank you for that question. Most of my time in the writing the book in as such was the easy part, right? It was documenting all the information and all the knowledge I gathered over 20 years of my experience, my learnings, my best practices. But what was difficult was kind of editing part where I had to bring down a huge content and putting it in a structure, and I gave it a lot of thought, right? So if you look at the book is broadly classified into four parts, Kritika, right? One is the first part as such is more about the history, and most of you, I guess, in parallel started working in the new age of working environment, the cloud centric work environment, where you take pay as you go models for granted, right? In fact, even Netflix and Gmail are in a way cloud applications, right? Though B2C, but they're still cloud applications. So I was fortunate enough to see the witness. I was fortunate enough to witness the transition from an on-prem solution to a cloud solution. So I kind of touched upon like how did the SaaS models come into play, and once the customers are used to SaaS and pay as you go model, it is very important for enterprises to make sure the customers continue to derive value from the platforms and continue to stay subscribed to their platforms or solutions or products, right? And that's where customer success comes in. So kind of the first part of my book covers some kind of the history of SaaS and the fourth industrial revolution and why customer success teams came into existence. And then the meat of the book or the main portion of the book is divided into two components. One is the customer centric, where I tried to look at customer success as a function from an outside in view, which includes how should you look at your customers, how should I classified everything that it takes for a customer success leader to kind of set up a team and know about the business or book of business or customer landscape from an outside in standpoint. And then the third part or the second meaty part of the book talks about the team, which is more inside out view of how a team should be set up, what should be the metrics that the team should be used, how should you hire leaders, and then the final part where I briefly touched upon the history of customer success, the future of customer success, how the role would evolve in the future to kind of cater to increased demand of cost pressures, and what would be the CSM role metamorphosizing into. So I think those are the four parts that I classified the book into.
I do want to know that, since you mentioned you have more than 2 decades of experience um, in customer success. So, anything new that you got to discover? Any surprising insights or learning about customer success that you discovered um, during the writing process or during the research process, which gave you that aha moment? Oh, I didn't know that. Um,
Yeah.
Beautiful
Yeah, no,
feeling.
I think I did not discover anything net new in terms of paradigm shifts in the CS role, Kritika. But when I was putting my thought to paper, I was able to kind of draw a timeline of sorts of how the customer success journey kind of evolved, right? I think there are two paradigms, right? One is how does an organization look at customer success, right, in their growth phase, and how customer success in itself changed from its role, definition, and expectation over the last two decades, right? So, to double click into the first question, right, about how do organizations look at customer success differently, right? So when you are a very new organization, right, when you're just barely getting started, when you're as a CXO or a CEO or co-founders trying to figure the product market fit, pretty much everything customer success is getting your hands dirty and making sure your product fits the customer. There is no standard sales pitch. There is no standard use cases. You are trying to go to the customer, understand what they are trying to do, and make your product fit to them. In these cases, there is no playbook. There is no best practices. There is no predictability in customer issues. You are just trying to make the product work for the customer. And this is where your team becomes very reactive. What then happens is you have established a product market fit. You exactly know what kind of customers to go behind. You exactly know what kind of product you need to sell them. That's when you become a bit more proactive. Not necessarily very autopilot. You will still have a lot of manual intervention, but you exactly know where the customers are going to face a problem. For example, hey, I know that the customer will face a problem during integration. I know the customer will face a problem during say high peak season like a festival season or whatever, right? So it is still a very people intensive, but it is very proactive. You don't have to wait for the problems to happen. You kind of anticipate the problems and try to apply some break fix and make sure the customer journey is smooth. Then you become consultative, where now you have spent enough time in the market solving for a specific problem, where you go to a customer and teach them what are the best practices of doing their own business. So that's very funny, right? That's where most of these strong global leaders like a ServiceNow, a Salesforce, an Adobe, a Microsoft operate in. For example, Salesforce can go into a company and teach a sales leader who's a veteran on how to do sales better. That's very interesting, right? That's the consultative nature, right? A service now can go help a service leader do things better. So that's the consultative approach, right? Where you have spent as a company a lot of time solving a particular problem. Now you people, including your customers, look up to you as subject matter experts in that region, and you solve for things in a different way, right? And actually, the nirvana of customer success Kritika is being transformative. This is where companies who are the futuristic companies are changing the way things are done. I'm talking about, say, for example, companies. I mean, again, some of this is hypothetical, right? These are still ideas in my brain. But think of a company that removes the need for even a CSM for scale customers. A company that removes the need for a call center employees. A company that removes the need for reminder, like human intervention in sending reminders and follow-ups, right? So these are all innovative products which a company, after spending a quality amount of time in solving for a problem, can predict the future and come up with solutions where the way of doing a particular activity is totally changed. So those are transformative customer success, right? So there are different scales, and not necessarily that a particular company should only operate in one of these buckets. A company can operate in multiple buckets simultaneously. So I, as a company, could be doing consultative work in one region because I have more maturity in the region. Whereas in some other regions, I might be still struggling with product market fit because that region operates separately. So this, Kritika, is something that I observed during my experience on how different companies grow, right? And the other thing that I observed is how the CSM role in itself changed over years, right? So when I started my career, uh, most of the operations, even before the CS role existed, there was no constant touch with the customer, right? There was a marketing team that would create a need, a sales team that would close the need. Then you would have a professional services team which would develop the software or integrate the software or deploy the software, and then they would hand over the software to the customer and leave. Thereon, you would only have support if you had product issues, or you would maintain the product or platform by yourselves. But then came a recurring revenue model where CSMs started existing. The first few phases of CSMs were making sure the customer just used the product and they are happy using the product, right? They did not have revenue responsibility. They did not have, renewal responsibility or upsell responsibility. They were purely making sure adoption, usage, champion. right? In some cases, mining and dining customers to make sure customer engagement was existing. But as you go ahead, the role evolved into this superhuman who could manage the revenue, who could anticipate risks, who could also um, solve, intervene, and firefight and solve for risks, right? So as we even go further, right, my anticipation is you will no longer have CSMs who will be operating on usage and adoption, right? My hypothesis, and again, it's not a very popular opinion, that if you are a CSM who are only working on making sure the product adoption and utilization happens, you will soon be replaced by product led growth organizations, and most of these activities will be done in one to many webinars. You are seeing existence of a lot of tools like Salesforce's Trailblazer, right? There were several communities where you can use the crowdsourced knowledge to make sure you're using the product. Also, these kind of resources are very capital intensive for an organization, so I just don't want, I mean, when I'm saying companies don't want to invest too much money in keeping these people who are just monitoring customers usage, which should technically be automated by the product led growth organizations. So in future I see companies either making money for CS or making money from CS. What I mean by that is if you have a skill set that your CSM can provide, which the customer is willing to pay for, right? So it could be an industry expertise, it could be a business expertise, or it could be a technical expertise that your CSMs can provide to the customer, where the customer doesn't mind paying extra dollars for the service. That's making money for CS. There are scenarios where companies can make money from CS as well, which is, hey, can I make sure my CSMs exist as engagement managers or account managers who are hunter farmers, where they can get additional revenue from existing customer base? That's also a valid, legitimate use case for me to spend some money, because I know I will get a lot more return on these investments. So I think in the future, resources where companies can either make money from or company can make money for will exist, and other tools will be replaced by more one to many or automation cases. So these are a few trends that I observed, Kritika, and I documented in my book, and hopefully you find that useful.
That's extremely fascinating, and
Thank
wow,
you.
I want like some seconds to take all of that in. But a lot of that things that you spoke about, points that you spoke about, I can also relate, and I've
Yeah,
seen some of these things in my almost a decade-long journey in customer success. I also started when I started, it was a lot reactive, um, and just ensuring that customer is using the product and not thinking about the value. And now it's all about value. It's all about how CS can be more of it's not seen as cost center
exactly,
anymore. It has become
exactly,
the source of that revenue, and a
exactly,
constant one for any
exactly.
sort of company. So I got to read a little bit about the sixth chapter, which is all about success plan, and I
Yeah,
feel like success plans are very much the basic block of what we do in customer success. It all
yeah.
starts with success plan. So um, I feel like we all know what success plan is, but it would be great if you can just give us like a quick intro of how do you think, or basically your approach in creating success plans evolved during last 2 decades or over the years, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked the question. It's one of those things. If I were to pick one, it's like all the chapters are written by me. But if there was one chapter that I would pick for a CSM, obviously for CS leaders there are different topics. But if for a CSM, if I were to pick one chapter that I really hope CSMs read and understand, is the customer success plan chapter, the chapter 6 that we were talking about. See, to me, customer success plan or map, right? I usually like to call it a map, is predominantly the blueprint that defines the success that your customers are going to have with you as a platform, product, or service, right? Irrespective of where the customer started, it is very important to have this document. And in the chapter, Kritika, I outlined various components, including baseline components that make a success plan, right? Like customer success, even success plan is a very loosely used term in the market, right? And I consult some of the leaders in CS, and I also talk to some of the CSMs. Then I ask them for what is a customer success plan. They show me a very good insight into various KPIs on product usage, adoption, number of licenses consumed, or the trend in licenses, number of active users, number of hours the active users spent on the platform. And then I go, this is not a success plan. This is a snapshot of your usage dashboard, right? So, success plan, at the very least, according to me, should include three components, right? What is the current state? What is the ideal state, or the state for which the customer to get to did the customer buy for, and the path along with the milestones are the base minimum components that every success plan should have. So if somebody shows me a success plan without an end state, I usually disqualify it as a success plan, right? Because without an end destination, where are you even going? Right? You can go in circles and you can pat your back on how awesome features are in your product. If you have not identified those unique KPIs and what is their end state that the customer has, if you're a service organization, if it's a cost reduction, so be it. Track it. What percentage did the customer want to achieve this year, and then break it down to this quarter, and then track it using your tool. If you're a sales platform, how many agents do you want to make more productive? What is that productivity metric? What is the ideal state for that productive metric? You're a marketing application. What is your revenue attribution? Track it. What are they currently? Where do they want to get to? Right. So at the bare minimum, you need to have a current state and an ideal state. In fact, I think I have in my life, right, and again, with my experience with Salesforce and More Engage, the most elaborate success plans have the detail to which you are tracking, including key people movements, promoters, detractors, org charts, usage over time, the risks, opportunities, potential upsells. So that's a traditional success plan that you build for your account, and then you also loop in your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders, and get a sign off on this document, so that when time comes for renewal and the customer says, show me the value, you just have to show the document and say, this is where you were, this is where you are, and this is the delta that we added through the platform, right? I think it's again, two things, right? It's the most important blueprint for your customer's success, and number two, it's a living document, right? And both of which people tend to kind of oversee and do their own thing, Kritika. So I hope people read the book in totality. But I think one advantage with my book is there is no story; it's just my learning. So you can just pick up the sixth chapter and read that as well. So that will be helpful too. So
Yeah, I mean, you rightly pointed out. I feel like customer success plans can really set CSM up for success if it is
yes,
done rightly. And yeah, definitely, it's a live document. You keep on working on it, and it creates like a very holistic, very complete journey for customers as well. They are also able to trust you better if they know, okay, what are the things that you are supposed to do, how are you going to
exactly.
do it. So yeah, I mean, since we are talking more from CSM perspective, can you give us some example of the tasks that, from the tactical perspective, that you guide CSM to include in the success plan?
Yeah, no, I think. See, I think now, so obviously, I covered a few parts in just my previous answer where I think everybody should definitely talk about what is the current state, future state, next important milestone that you are planning to hit in the next 30, 60, 90 days. I think those are all table stakes, and I think everybody should tackle. I think what differentiates a good CSM from an average CSM is the ability of risk perception a good CSM has, and the amount of research a good CSM does. Like I do work with exceptional CSMs in the industry. There are some CSMs that I work with who come up with even the fiscal strength of the customer, right? So they do research to an extent where is the customer healthy enough to pay bills? Are they paying their customers? Are they paying their employees? So the level of research that goes into identifying the health of the customer beyond what is obvious is what I think differentiates good CSMs from an average CSM. And I'm a very practical person, Kritika, as well, and I know that uh, in this day and age there is a constant pressure on increasing number of customers per CSM and amount of MRR or revenue that a CSM manages is increasing. So I definitely don't think every account needs this level of drill down, but every CSM should have a judgment on what are his top accounts that are ripe for growth, what are his bottom accounts that are about to churn, and then do research accordingly, right? And I think that's the job, right? 90% of a CSM's job is to prioritize and manage the portfolio.
Um, can you explain how do you use risk reward matrix to prioritize in customer success plan and how CSMs can do it as well?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, right? And again, every company is different, every CS leader is different, and this is where, which again, like if I have to take one chapter out for CS leaders, that would be the metrics chapter, right? Like I said, for CSMs, it's the business plan or success map, whichever name you want to give it. That's for CSMs, and for CS leaders, it's the metrics, right? So I think uh, metrics, particularly metrics when you're talking about your long tail customers, is very critical, Kritika, right? And why is that critical? Is again, like we discussed, right? If you plot your customers on a risk reward metric, customers who are placed on high risk, high reward are obviously the customers who take the maximum amount of attention from you. Customers who are low risk, low reward are typically self sustained customers who are pretty much on the autopilot. Customers where there is very low reward and very high risk are customers. Again, this is not a very popular term in the business, but can be forced churns as well, where you know that beyond a point there is no margin from the customers and it's just a bad fit, right? And we all have seen some of those bad fit customers. Then that's where you decide on parting ways with your customer, saying, "Hey, it's not a good fit. Let's part ways and hope you get a better customer," right? And the customers who are very low risk but high reward are your growth accounts where you get more number of upsells, and reward doesn't necessarily mean, Kritika, it's only monetary. Sometimes references, word of mouth, advocacy, case studies, there is a lot which can be attributed to a customer reward, right? Just a customer, by virtue of being a happy customer, can be such a good reference, and both for like your company and yourselves as a CSM. So I think it's very important for a CS leader to have those leading and trailing indicators, start focusing on leading indicators in terms of what is the NPS, Net Promoter Score, is the single most important metric that you should track as a CS leader, which is one of the most leading indicators, usage trends, and there are several other factors that I've outlined in the book that I think CS leaders can benefit from. But the point is, once you have had systems built internally to track these metrics, the next thing would be to bucket your customers, right? And if you bucket your customers, that's when you realize how to prioritize and how to map and how to work on splitting your time and resources across these various buckets, Kritika. So that's how important metrics are, and I outlined the whole aspect about what are the metrics, leading, trailing metrics, and how do you classify your customers into various buckets.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's a really powerful tool that any CSM can use to um, decide where to focus their effort and where it will make the most impact. All right, I'm saving my favorite questions for the last. You have already mentioned that this book will guide us as to how customer success from India context. A lot of material that we have already present, books that we have present in the market are most from the Western perspective, written by these authors who are primarily in Europe or US. So in India, everyone is kind of talking about how India is at the pinnacle at this moment and for the coming decade. So, what unique challenges and opportunity do you see in building CS team in India for the global market?
Customer success as a function is a bit more evolved, and you can find customer success managers with lot longer tenures in the Western market compared to India. When I started this journey of building a customer success team from India for the globe, there were a lot of challenges in terms of even identifying the right CS talent. With no due disrespect to any company or any individual, what CS meant was very different depending on what the company was planning to do with the CSMs. Like we discussed, there were some companies which only did usage and adoption tracking, called them CSMs, right? There were some companies which were very reactive and only doing tech support, calling them CSMs. So a basic example of hiring a CS leader from the market, you look at two very similar resumes, and based on the interactions you had with these leaders during interview, their experience could have been very different. They were speaking the same language on the resume, they were saying the same metrics on the resume, they were talking about the same outcomes on the resume. But when I explored their experience through interviews and through references, I realized the problems they were solving were different for different markets. So I think um, initially, at least now, things have settled down. Even like the rapid growth of CS function in India, owing to the B2B SaaS startup expansion in India, is leading to a steady standardization of CS roles, responsibility, and nomenclature. So now the world is a bit different from India. But when I started, even the job descriptions were different depending on which company you were talking to, right? So that's one of the problems. I think the other problem of building a CS function um, uh, in India to cater to the globe are multifold, right? One is the whole cultural nuance, and I think we are very lucky as a country that exposure to international work culture, exposure to companies like BPOs, KPOs, and even outsourcing technology companies and services companies gave Indian workforce a good exposure to various cultures. So it was relatively easy to build regional teams in India to support international markets, right? So I think it is a niche again. Like you have to identify the right talent with the right exposure. I've had great resources in my life in various companies who were working in India with very regional specific cultural exposure, which is only possible in India, right? I've had CSMs with great exposure to football culture in Europe and NFL culture in US without having to even travel to those countries. The amount of research, the amount of experience they've had in working in that region. I think India is lucky, and I think now with the combination of exposure to technology, advanced technology, exposure to cultural nuances, ability to converse in advanced English, these are the skills that will enable us to further make India the global kind of epicenter to service customers from India globally, which will again also enhance the ability of all the B2B SaaS companies coming out of India to cater to the world from India. But also, I think the other trend you will see very soon is global companies moving their CS and operations to India for cost efficiency and quality increase. So I'm foreseeing more of that happen as well in the market. So if nothing else, there is going to be a huge demand for customer success professionals in India who can cater to the world. So I'm very excited about what the future has in store for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like India already had like a lot of these SaaS companies, a lot of these big names. They have like very large CS team, support team, professional services team. based out of India just because of the cost. But for some, it's not just about cost because I feel in India, customer success is also rapidly going. Like it's one of the biggest customer success professional network,
Yeah.
right in the world.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we do have a large population, but and people who are at
We
that
also have the service mindset, exactly. Yeah.
right. But I feel like this market has grown so much, and year by year, I see more and more people coming, and there are different names. People are still trying to figure out what customer success exactly is and how they can solve different problems that exist. But I feel like we have solved a lot of problems already, like which other
Yes.
people in different part of the world are not able to figure out. And we do have solution for it. We have um, and not just one solution, we have solved it in like multiple
Different
ways.
business models, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm also truly excited what um, people, professionals from India is going to put forward in terms of different practices, different solutions, and like with your book, I feel like it's going to bring out that perspective a lot in front of others.
Thank you, Kritika. I appreciate it.
All right. So you have also mentioned that the next phase of CS innovation will come from India. Can you elaborate a bit on this? What companies or professionals who are in CS, what do you think they should do to prepare for this shift?
So basically, I think the advantage in general we have is our frugal nature and service centric attitude. So, what that forces some of the SaaS companies from India operate is we have very efficient margin calls. So, we are built, and companies like Amazon are built on frugality as a core principle, right? So, I think, see, advantage that we have is the ability to come up with innovative solutions at low cost.
Right.
And coupled with that are new and efficient tools like generative AI. So, gone are those days where CSMs would spend in articulating their minutes of meeting into an email. I still remember in the beginning, we used to spend like at least 15-20 minutes on proofreading and articulating the minutes of meetings, making sure everything is. Now there are like Grammarly, Google Doc, there are like advanced Gen AI tools which are making efficient CSMs even more efficient, right? So I think it's a combination of the tools that we have access to, and the mindset we have in terms of both being customer centric and cost effective will put us at the pole position. Also, I think on an average, Indian CSMs are a bit more tech savvy. I guess because everybody who comes into workforce has some exposure to engineering, problem solving, and technology. I think average technical talent is higher, and I think that's also going to be a strength because this is the time where every organization is a technology organization and every organization is a digital organization. So like I said, customer centric attitude, frugal nature, access to tools like Gen AI, and the technical acumen to solve problems, particularly technical problems, will help us catapult our positioning globally.
Yes, absolutely. And do you have any suggestion for professionals who are coming in, how they can prepare better um, to be that best talent for leaders to hire, best talent to perform well in this industry? Maybe if you
You know,
can
that's
mention.
a great question, right? And I often say this. In fact, like, even if, thank you for asking, even if you would not have asked, I leave every meeting saying this, right? Previously, customer success managers were supposed to be generalists who were big picture thinkers who would be superficially looking at stuff. Gone are those days. I think now CSM should have one superpower outside just being a CSM, right? Being a CSM is no longer a valuable skill. You have to be either technically savvy, you should have either a program management or an operational skill, or you should have some sales skill. You should be very good at demo presentation or pitching. I think it's about time where CSMs start thinking about what else can I do if I'm not a CSM, right? I'm a technical architect. Can I be a TAM? I think now is the era of super CSMs where CSMs are expected to be more than CSMs, right? It is counterintuitive, but if you build your tech muscle, you can go into being a technical architect or a solution architect or even be a technical account manager. And there is a lot of scope there for growth. Or if you are programs or an operations person, you can go into digital success, leading digital success team, focusing on improving the efficiency, or even success operations could be a great ladder for you to grow on. And if you are good at sales, account management, identifying opportunities, doing demos or sales presentations or first call pitches, then you can carve your path to be a hunting farmer, right? Or a farmer hunter, or the account management piece where you can bring in additional revenue for the company from the customers. So I think I leave all the listeners with this thought of go ask yourselves what else are you good at other than just being a CSM, right? Because just being a CSM is no longer relevant in this job market.
Absolutely. This is the truth at the moment. Definitely, every CSM has to bring that, how they can be a little more extra, or how they can take that one step further to provide
Yeah.
value. Um, Great. This has been such an incredible, insightful discussion, Atma. Can you tell our listeners where they can find the book,
Yeah.
Customer Success Flywheel, and how they can get one?
No, thank you very much, Kritika. Firstly, I really enjoyed the conversation as well, and hope the audience and listeners of your podcast also take something away from this conversation. I thank you, and thank you to all your listeners for tuning in. You can get your copy of the Customer Success Flywheel on Amazon. You can look it up. It's available both in the States and in India, wherever you're listening from. But only one request I have is once you've finished reading the book, please do give your review. I appreciate reviews a lot. I hope to improve myself based on the feedback that you're giving. And I genuinely feel the future belongs to customer success professionals. This is the time where everybody is looking at engagement and retention more than acquisition. So this is our time to shine, and I hope all of you take something away from the book. And thank you again, Kritika, for the opportunity.